Good morning, good morning, everybody, wherever you are. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Here we go. Live with Dr. Shay Marshall. I've been telling you about this interview, and we're here. And you are going to enjoy what she has to say, I'm sure. I'm sure. Um, give you a little background real quick. Dr. Shay is one of my clients. She's a new client, and but she's not the traditional type of client. Her needs were different, and I'm gonna let her talk about that. Um, Her needs were different than most people's, and so uh, on our first session, just listening to her story, you know, um, I was just thinking like people need to hear this, because she's a very, I guess, accomplished person, you could say. She's a PhD wellness coach, and that title in and of itself don't mean nothing, right? Because there's a lot of wellness coaches, there's a lot of health coaches, there's a lot of nutritionists out there, and they don't know shit. They like there's hella nutritionists out there telling you to eat the rotten flesh of dead animals. Like, what type of nutrition is that? But they're certified, they're licensed, they have the paperwork backing them, and they have no idea what they're talking about. So I was reading her book this morning, and I could tell from our conversation that she didn't fit in that mold, you know. And as I was reading her book this morning, I was reading like, okay, this is good. This is good. You know. So I'm excited for y'all to hear her story and her journey. So I'm done talking. I'm about to bring her in. Everybody, Dr. Shay Marshall.
Hello.
Afternoon, Dr. Shay.
Hi. Yes, it's
How
afternoon
are
here.
you?
Good morning to you in Ohio.
Thank you. Thank you. How are you today?
I'm doing great, and I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. I was just sharing a little background basically on how we met
Yeah.
and what inspired me to want to do my first interview ever. Right. And
Like,
so,
honor. That's a huge honor, by the way. Like, I don't take that lightly. I'm like, oh, I can add that to my list of credentials now. Like, I was Cameron Ramon's first ever interview.
yeah, I never even had any intentions on interviewing anyone, you know. Um, but after, just listening to you talk, I don't know. I really wanted to interview you. I wanted people to hear your story and about your journey and, what you were sharing with me, on our first call. So let's get right into it because we don't have a whole lot of time.
Okay.
So tell everyone that don't know you a little bit about you.
Okay, so my name is Dr. Shay Marshall. I am a PhD wellness coach. I'm also the creator of Eat to Grow Rich, which is my wellness brand and platform, which is really centered around holistic wellness. So for our premise is that, as health is wealth and you are what you eat, You should eat to go rich, and EAT is an acronym, stands for emotions, actions, and thoughts. Because oftentimes we talk about wellness, we only sometimes focus on the physical or the mental or the emotional or the spiritual. We never understand that they are integrated. So my wellness platform is really all around holistic wellness, dealing with the mind, body, and the spirit. I'm also a published author, which I heard you mention about, and I'm so happy to hear that you're reading my book and you enjoy it. But I have published 2 books. The first being Flush the Junk, which is a comprehensive guide to enemas and detoxification. And it's also a complement and a supplementary tool to the main book, which is the 3F effect, which is how to lose weight quickly with fruit fasting and fitness, which is basically a guide through the framework that I use to find holistic wellness, right? And what I really like about that book is that in each one of those components, we deal with how they benefit mental, physical, and spiritual health. And so that's really me and who I am, right? So it's like you do the things, but the emotions and the thoughts really serve as the platform and the foundation for why we behave the way that we do. And as I was kind of on my journey, I learned that it wasn't enough to just focus on changing my actions. I also had to work on leveling up my emotional and my mental capacity as well. And so, yeah. And now here we are. I've been working with clients now for the last 10 years, working with helping people find their way. Because we don't just work with, like I said, we don't just work with the physical, we work with the whole person. So helping clients, whether it is, face different illnesses, lose weight, career growth, relationship things, everything, because it's all interconnected, right? So, yeah. And that's who I am, and that's where I'm at.
Okay, so you are currently, there's a lot of things I want to ask you, but
Yes.
you're currently eating just watermelon. Let's talk
Yes.
about that a little bit.
Okay. Okay. Well, you are my inspiration for that. That's why I booked you as a coach, because I was new to that, and I've been raw vegan now for the last 12 years. But my raw vegan journey has had seasons of like very high raw, 100% raw, maybe 75% raw, some cooked. Um, I've had seasons of doing fruit. Like I usually do um, all fruit or lots of fruits during the summer and the summer months. But for the last 6, almost 7 years, I've been living in Europe, mostly Northern Europe, so Denmark and England. And it gets really cold here. Um, and so even if I'm raw, I've been kind of more like salads, avocados, like the fattier, kind of like heavier raw foods. And then recently, my motivation for doing this watermelon cleanse, or I'm not even calling it a cleanse because I'm raw vegan anyway. So eating all fruit isn't that big of a jump. But what really made me want to focus on just this one fruit was really the spiritual aspect. So I've been, this last year for me has been lots going on. And in the middle of like kind of reaching this crossroads where I was at a transition in life where I'm debating on, do I want to go back to America full time, or do I want to stay in Europe, or what do I want to do, right? I was really looking for some clarity and some guidance from God. So I was like, I need to clean it up. I need to clean up my diet, get that very clean, because I always find that the cleaner I eat, the sharper my connection is with spirit. And when I'm in this period of like not sure or not being sure, do I go left? Do I go right? I was like, okay, the simplest thing to do is to do the simplest thing. And so that's what I've been doing. So now I'm on like day 52 of eating only watermelon. I still do teas and stuff like that. I do my herbs and stuff like that. But yeah, 50 something days of only watermelon. And it's been the easiest thing I've ever done. I think that's the first thing. It's actually been the easiest thing I've ever done. Everything else felt like hard. This has been easy. It is fun. And I eat so much watermelon, like, yeah.
You know, that's been my experience with it too. It's not everyone's experience though. You know,
Yeah.
like I've seen people come on the watermelon and I mean straight from the standard American diet and just crush it.
Yeah.
You know, last year, uh I'm not remembering her name right now, but she did over 100 days uh with me and Bobby, and never done anything like that in her life. My first time, after digging in a trash can, fishing out some chips and some old stale guacamole that I threw away 2 days ago and smashing,
Mhm.
I started watermelon and I mean straight out of addiction and did 160 days.
That was very
Um,
impressive. And that was very inspiring and motivating to someone like me because I'm like, how do you go? So because my transition wasn't like that. Like, I didn't go, you know what I'm saying? Like, my transition really wasn't like that. My transition was, I always tell people, especially my clients, I'm like, it's levels to it. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely took it in levels, or in
so
stages.
don't get into the transition yet. Um, what I want to ask you about on your watermelon experience, there's a couple things. One, what have you noticed while being on the watermelon? Like you talked about noticing there's a stronger connection with you and spirit the cleaner you eat.
Mhm.
Um, I want to know what other experiences or other ways have you benefited during your watermelon journey? And you also mentioned lifing,
Because it
right?
like,
Right. And
yeah.
when life starts lifing, um, you know, the thing most of us don't understand about that is life is lifing to help us level up. But most of us don't see it like that. And it causes us to, you know, become stressed. It can cause anxiety. It causes a number of low vibrational energies or emotions. And if anyone falls away from fruit, from their cleanse, whatever they're doing, that's the reason why.
100% every time.
Because life started lifing and they was feeling some type of way about it and they needed comfort. So I want you to talk about not just what you've experienced while doing the watermelon. Also, how do you handle life when it starts lifing?
That's a good question. Um, so I'm going to start with the first question, and it should answer. I'm going to start with the last question, which was, how do you handle life when life starts lifing? Because that is honestly like the tagline for my life right now is like, wow. But for me, like I said, so I am very rooted in my spirituality. I think that's my saving grace. That's my go-to no matter what's going on, right? Like, get back to spirit, you know. And so for me, when life starts lifing, I instantly look at, okay, how are my emotions, actions, and thoughts lining up? Because my core belief, is that, you know, your current reality is a reflection of how you're showing up, right? So because I really have this deep-seated belief that everything that you encounter is a mirror for yourself, good and bad. And so when life starts lifing for me and I'm feeling things, or I'm feeling uncomfortable, or I'm experiencing things that are making me feel away, I know that there's some cleansing that I need to do. There may be some fasting that I need to do, some prayer, some meditation, some journaling, some writing. which is how we got 2 books now, because life was lifing, but I realized life was lifing because I was not really answering the call that God had been giving me. And he's been giving me this calling for a very, very long time. And I always have some delightful distraction or some delightful reason why I need to be focused on some other things, because before I started writing, I actually really didn't enjoy writing. And I know that sounds wild, but the last big piece that I wrote was my dissertation, and that was like 10 years ago. And that was not a fun experience. And if anyone's ever written a dissertation, it's not a pleasant experience. So following that, I just was like, I don't really like writing. But I realized I always had a lot to say. I always got a lot to say. Ask my friends, I'm always talking. You know what I'm saying? Especially about this and about these topics. I could talk about this for to the end of the time. But I didn't want to write. I was just very resistant to it. I would jot notes down, or write pieces here and there, and never really fully committed to it. And then once I started doing it, it's the same thing like the watermelon. I was like, oh, this is not hard at all. Like, actually, I really enjoy this. And I realized that it gave me a way to channel my thoughts, and to organize them in a way that was structured, beginning, middle, and end, mind, body, and spirit. And that helped me a lot, because for me, my core belief is that anything you're experiencing is a direct reflection for how you're showing up. Whether you want to be real or whether you want to own that or not, that is the reality. And that has been my reality. So I always know that when life starts lifing, there's some work that I need to be doing that I'm not doing. And so I start taking those steps. And I be slow with it sometimes. Like, even before I went all watermelon, I didn't do all watermelon. Like, I had some days where I would do like maybe watermelon for breakfast and lunch, and then I would still have a salad for dinner. Or I might do like one day all watermelon and then go back to, different fruits and stuff like that. And then it was actually Lachey Taylor, who I reached out to on Instagram, and I was chatting with her. And she said something to me that was like, maybe just do like 30 days once a year, or like every couple months or something like that. I think we was like thinking about it on like a quarterly basis. And she was like, maybe just do like 30 days, every quarter. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Because that doesn't seem, because I'm looking at you and you did 160 days. So I'm like, oh, okay. But anyway, starting with, it was the small steps. And it's the same thing with everything. So to answer your question in terms of like, how do I start lifing? Well, how do I handle life when life starts lifing? I'm very real with me. That's me. I'm very real with me. I don't have a problem looking myself in the mirror and being honest about how I'm showing up. And I know when I'm doing the work that I'm supposed to be doing and when I'm not. And even if I'm being resistant to doing what I need to do, I'm aware that I'm being resistant. And at some point, when I want change or when I'm ready for change, I know that the change ultimately starts with me, my emotions, my actions, and my thoughts. And so I'm very intentional about kind of working through that framework to help me level up. And that's kind of, really how we ended up here, and how I ended up reaching up to you, and how I ended up on watermelon. Was life started lifing real bad. And I was just in a space of not really knowing what to do. And I was looking for answers and thinking I'm supposed to do one thing or, and I was just like, okay, I came to a crossroads. Actually, what it was I was considering moving back to the States, and like very serious, like I'm about to pack up and get up out of here. And I had a job opportunity out there, and I had this very weird encounter. And I know you're going to appreciate this, is why I'm telling you this, but I had this very weird encounter. So without saying too many details, I was actually interviewing to work at a hospital. I don't know why I did that. Let's start there. But that's a different story for a different day. But I was interviewing to work at this hospital, and I would have been like the I would have been the executive director for all the IT and programs for this entire network of hospitals across this entire state. And I had dinner or like a lunch meeting with the one of the chief executives on the board. So he's like very high in the organization, and we have lunch. He orders a sandwich, I order a salad. We're eating the meal, we're having a good conversation, and he's the person I would have been directly reporting to. And at the end of the meal, he goes, "Well, I can't believe you ordered a salad." He's like, "You should get a burger next time." And in my mind, I'm like, did this the chief executive now of this hospital, tell me that I should have got a burger? And I was like, is he trying to turn me into one of the patients? I came here thinking I could help. He's trying to indoctrinate me into the nonsense. And I was just like, that was like a very jarring experience for me, because I'm thinking like, it's the hospital. This is a good, you know what I'm saying? And that really made me question, like, oh, okay, I don't think this is the right environment for me. And so having had to face that and really make a decision, like, am I going to turn down this job and they paying, you know what I'm saying? I get to go back to the crib. I get to be with the homies. You know what I'm saying? I'm ready to go back home. I'm ready to be around my people. I was like, but this ain't the right opportunity. And I had to face that, because part of me was almost willing to keep going and to take it and figure it out. But then I'm like, sometimes you got to read the writing on the wall. You know what I'm saying? And if this is where we're at this stage, it's only going to exacerbate from there or get worse from there. So I was just like, and then so now I got to come back to this other reality where I'm like, okay, then what? Like, if I don't do this, then what? And then I was like, you know what? You need to cleanse, because you don't have an answer right now. You know what I'm saying? So I immediately started the process of slow walking myself into this process of cleansing and getting back close to spirit and really trying to figure out and seeking that guidance. And so one of the other benefits that I've noticed during this time is the clarity. I feel very clear. I feel very aligned. I knew that definitely wasn't the right opportunity for me. And I think that God is very proud of me for not, I think it was like, and I know some people have different modalities for how they look at spirituality, but for me, I kind of look at it as like, it was almost like a test. Him saying like, I'm going to dangle this, you know what I'm saying, temptation in your face, make it disguised to look like it's everything you think you want, or at least a path to everything you think you might want. But how are you going to handle the situation when I clearly let you know that this is not coming from me? How do you handle that? And what do you do? And so I would say that's the biggest benefit for me, is really the mental clarity, because I had already lost a bunch of my weight already. So people are asking me how much weight I lost. I'm like, I don't really know, because I never weighed myself. I have lost some weight, but it's not really that drastic from where I already was. So it really wasn't about weight loss. It really wasn't about really much physical, and as much as it was just like emotional and mental, and me trying to manage that in this season of already so many other things going on, right? And so, yeah.
You know what I want to just touch on, because the way, like you said it, like just really casually, but I understand the significance of that situation that you were in, and I want to just kind of just highlight that real briefly, where you had that meeting with that executive, and I know you was looking at, like, I know them ends was gonna be meeting, them ends was gonna be overlapping,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so you have to be really mature, like spiritually, to have an opportunity like that, but choose your morals, your values over that, right? Like it made me think of, there's a story in the Bible where it's amazing how much I talk about the Bible not being a Christian, but there's a story in the Bible where the devil took Jesus up on these mountains, and he was just tempting him with different things. And one of the temptations was, I will give you, see all that? See it like they're overlooking like everything.
It's like that Mufasa and Simba moment where Mufasa's like, everything that the light touches is ours. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. And he said, all of this right here, all of that, as far as your eyes can see, I will give to you if you bow down and worship me. And I mean, you look at society today, a lot of people are bowing down and worshiping
False
I
gods.
mean, they are doing whatever it takes to get a little piece of that fame, of those earthly riches. They're doing whatever it takes. I'm not even like, I'm not even gonna get into the details of the things that I hear.
Yeah.
But that's what they're doing. And so to stand your ground and to give up the earthly riches, the monetary gain that could change your life in a lot of ways, and the lives of others that are close to you, your family, like, but to stand on the truth, that was a powerful display of spiritual maturity right there. And I mean, I was just thinking, what if you wouldn't have made that decision, but you would have chose the money instead? Having that clarity and that awareness in the situation prevented you from, like, there's no telling, you know, what you could have put yourself into if you would have accepted
Yeah.
that position.
Yeah.
You know, you definitely wouldn't have. I don't know, like, some people can compromise. Like, I've heard people say, I don't care what I'm doing as long as it pay well. Like, I don't care.
I mean, and that might be true in the beginning. You might
Yeah,
enjoy it a little while, but then,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, and that is for me one of the things that I've learned. That's why my brand is called Eat to Grow Rich, was because throughout my entire life, right? Like, I'm very ambitious. I've always been the one that's like, if you put an opportunity in front of me, I'm gonna go for it. You know what I'm saying? So I was one of those that, like, I worked. You know what I'm saying? I had 3 jobs in high school type working. Like, I've been working. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, I don't have a problem doing hard work. And so I kind of worked myself to a point where it's like, okay, I received all the monetary gains that you can get, right? Like, I'm living comfortably, I'm living fine, I can take care of my family, I can do things that I want to do with my money, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm still one of them. And I definitely, one of the things that I was attracted to about you was that you're relatable to me, because I see you as like how I see myself, which is just like, yeah, we do these things, but we're just regular people. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, like, I'm still from where I'm from. I still behave how I behave. So it's like, I got the money and I turned up. And I was doing all the turn up stuff. You know what I'm saying? We taking the trips, we in the club, we in VIP, we doing all the things. You know what I'm saying? And then you get to a point where you realize, like, oh, none of that matters, actually. Like, all it takes is a tragic moment for you to realize, like, oh, this money don't mean nothing at the end of the day. Because for all the money I have, I would pay it all to get certain people back that have passed or that have gone away. Or, if money could solve all my problems, I wouldn't have no problems. You know what I'm saying? And so then you start realizing, like, oh, it ain't the money. And so, yeah, you might think you can make this sacrifice. And that is the inner conflict and the conversation I was having with myself was, I could probably muscle through it. You know what I'm saying? I could probably muscle through it just to get, you know what I'm saying, some of these things that I think that I want, which is not really, it really wasn't like, it's not that I have like a monetary desire, but if I'm going to move back to the States and I'm going to move back to the crib, like, I want it to be, you know what I'm saying? I need to be it need to be right, and not like, okay, it need to be right. So I was like, as long as the money right, you think, and then after a while, it's like the newness of everything wears off pretty quickly, right? So you go buy your dream car. After a while, it's just a car. You know what I'm saying? You go get the shoes. after a while, they just the shoes. Or you go get the material things, and then you start realizing like the designer don't really mean, like having a designer label on something don't really mean much, because it break and tear like the regular stuff do. You know what I'm saying? And at that point, it's even more of a hassle to get it replaced or get it repaired than it would be just to buy another new. You know what I'm saying? So you just, I think for me, it's like I went through that phase already where I'm able to better see through the illusion. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know that the money isn't, I know that oftentimes more money will create a different set of problems. Like, it might solve this set of problems, right? So it's like, okay, yeah, I might get to move back home and do it the way I want to and da 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 da. But there's also going to be, okay, now what if I hate my job? And what if I hate my boss? Because my boss doesn't even understand that he should not be telling people as the chief executive for a hospital to eat burgers. So if he's doing that, what other poor choices or decisions does he make on a day-to-day basis that don't align with the fundamentals for what we're achieving, what we're trying to achieve? I looked at it like that, you know what I'm saying? But it was me knowing that I needed to, because I was distracted for a second. I was like, I might can muscle through it. I might can do it. And then I was just like, again, everything is a mirror. That's how I see my experience through this world. Everything is a mirror. So I'm like, okay, if I'm encountering this man who is so clearly operating out of alignment, I must also too be operating out of alignment in some way. So then you got to go through your checklist: emotions, actions, thoughts. What am I doing? How am I feeling? How am I thinking? How am I processing certain things? And then I realized what the issue really was, is that I had, like I said, this year has been a wild year. And I had a lot of emotional things happen. Not even just this last year. I would say really like the last 4 years has been, you know, and there was a lot of emotional things a lot of emotional baggage that I was carrying, and I hadn't let it go. And I was carrying it with me. I was carrying around a lot of hurt, a lot of frustration, a lot of grief from people that have passed, and I realized that that's really what it was. Like, my emotions are out of sync right now. Like, they're out of alignment. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm carrying all this negative stuff with me. My actions are good. I'm eating clean. Like I said, I've been raw vegan. I'm eating clean. I'm working out. I'm doing the things. I'm journaling. You know, I'm doing the things I need for my mental. But I'm not taking care of my emotional self because I'm so busy trying to be okay in a situation where I'm really just not okay. And so I had to take that time to accept or to acknowledge that it's like, oh, I'm just not okay right now emotionally. And instead of trying to like run from those feelings, which is something that I am notorious for doing, is trying to run from my emotions because I feel it so heavily, I realized that I just had to like go through it. I had to feel what I feel and then acknowledge that it's like, oh, that's really just a perception. That's my perception of this situation. You know what I'm saying? And oftentimes the things that people do, or the way that you interact with people, their behavior has sometimes very little to do with you and more to do with them and what they're processing, what they're going through. And so just really forgiving a lot of people. I had to have a lot of tough conversations with people. I had to go do the work, is essentially what I'm saying. I had to go do the emotional work of dealing with what I'm feeling and why, as opposed to trying to numb it and suppress it for fear that if I do feel it, I may break, or I may fall apart, or I may snap, because I got that in me too. So I was just like, I got to deal with what I'm really feeling. So I've had a lot of conversations with people in my inner circle recently about encounters we may have had and things that I didn't like, or things may have transpired in a way. And my response at that time was just to block, delete, move on. You know what I'm saying? Ignore, because I already know my programming. So my programming is, if I feel disrespected, I'm going to handle it like I've been disrespected. That's not always the best way. So I had to grow from that. And then my next level was like, okay, cool. We're just going to ignore, you don't exist. And then I had to realize through this moment, this transition moment, where I'm like, oh, okay, now God is calling me to grow up. even grow up a different level, right? So where it's not where I used to be proud of myself, but I used to make this joke with people all the time. I was like, I feel like I need a reward for not going off. And I really meant that in my spirit. I was like, no, see, I didn't do the thing. So I need a reward now. And I realized that like still the blocking, the leading, ignoring is also not dealing with the real issue, right? So I had to go do the work. And that's kind of what I've been doing. So this whole cleansing period, which I don't really call this watermelon thing a cleanse, because again, I do this all the time anyway. I'm just mono eating, you know what I'm saying, or eating one fruit. But in this season, it's really allowing me to face the reality about like what I feel, why I feel it, why I'm behaving the way I am. And then knowing that the only way to get through it is to go through it. And the only way to go through it a lot of times is really you have to sit down and have these tough conversations. And so I've really been in a season of just like being honest about how I feel about certain things and why. And then working with people to understand, help them understand that it's like, okay, this is where I was coming from, understand where they was coming from. And that don't always mean that the relationship is all good. Now we back besties again. Sometimes it isn't just like, I'm glad sometimes it is closure where it's just like, we were great for a season and now we have to, continue to go on our own journeys and let them take us where we go. And sometimes it is good to just clear the air and now it's like, okay, cool. Now we can get back to, you know what I'm saying? The good times.
What's interesting, like I'm just listening to you talk and you're talking about the work that like most people don't realize is required. That's really what this fruit journey or this fruit life is all about. And specifically the watermelon, when you do mono eat, like when you're transition, that's what it's really about. Like I was just talking about this last night in our watermelon washout on our Zoom meeting. And this is a spiritual journey, and fruit, just eating fruit, mono eating, it's not just about, I know like most people are focusing on the physical aspects, the physical healing, but fruit is a whole life detox. Mm-hmm. When you eat just fruit, like fruit is going to bring to your, I'm not going to say the fruit, but just having your body, your system clean,
right,
from all the bullshit that's not food, all the poison, the drugs, and you're eating food,
right,
for a period of time, whether it's a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is. When you're eating food and you're not putting the poisons in your body any longer, at least for that period of time, your awareness is going to become heightened and things are going to come to you that you need to address in your life, in your relationships. Like you need to let that go. Right. Like I became celibate eating fruit. I had no intentions on being celibate. And my first year of fruit, I was with somebody. I was kind of like with my dream girl. It was like the perfect arrangement. We had been seeing each other for a few years, and this was the timing. Like I knew it was coming. And I didn't know why I was being led that way, but I knew I was being led that way. So I told her that I wouldn't be having sex no more, and she left. Like she was just outie. Yeah. I was like, damn, no kiss on the cheek, a handshake, a pound, nothing. Yeah. But I get it because it's sex addiction. I was a sex addict. She was a sex addict. It wasn't even, we didn't even vibe with each other like that. It was just all physical. And I learned so much about that experience. But this is a result of just eating fruit, but more importantly, not eating the bullshit.
There you go.
Right?
That's what
So, because
it is.
people don't understand, when you eat this man made shit, all these chemicals, your body functions based on chemical reactions. It's all like chemical communication, electrical signals, info.
Yeah.
When you put these unnatural, toxic, man made chemicals in your body, it interferes with all of those connections, all of those communications.
Well, you become unnatural because
Exactly. Because you're
start
eating
operating.
unnatural,
Yeah.
right? You're not even eating food, right? So there's no way you can live your best life if you're not even eating food.
Right.
There's no way you could be healthy mentally, emotionally, or physically if you're not even eating food.
Right.
So what I wanted to ask you about though, and yeah, so I like how you talked about that, because until hearing you say it, I've never heard anyone else say it but me. Just as I was talking on the Zoom last night, like, you're focusing on what you're eating. That's the wrong focus.
Right.
You're focusing on you're slipping up. You're trying to eat just watermelon, but you just keep falling. That shouldn't even be the focus. The focus should be why.
Right.
Right? So, and you've been doing the work, that inner work. That's the real work. That's the work.
Well, you don't
And
have no choice
so, what I
because once
wanted
you
to
start,
ask you though
yeah.
was, what started you to transition? Your full standard American diet, you living life, you know,
We be outside.
whatever that was. I don't know if you were drinking, smoking, you're in the rest, like, you kicking it, you
Yeah.
loving life. What made you want to leave all of that behind and
Um.
come to this side?
Yeah. That's a great question. And it's actually a very loaded question. But before I answer that, I want to piggyback on something you just said, and you were talking about how basically, once you start eating the fruit, like you kind of have to do that emotional work to in order to keep it going. And the reason being is because, like you speak about in your book, Overcoming Addictions. If you don't have it, you should definitely go buy it. It's worth reading. Um, as you speak about those foods, those unnatural foods aren't really foods; they're really drugs. And so, oftentimes, you're numbing yourself through these stimulants, right? So, like all these, like cooked food is a stimulant, which people don't even realize. But cooked food is a stimulant. A lot of the chemicals in the processed food, like I'm super curious. Sometimes I just look up stuff. So like not even yesterday, like maybe a couple days ago, I was like, let me just Google the ingredients on a bag of chips. I'm not gonna say the brand name, but triangular shaped golden tortilla chips, and all different flavors like Cool Ranch and cheddar and all that. So I was like, let me just see the ingredients in these bag of chips. And then I Googled like all the side effects, like what is it really? Because I look at, so what I like to do is like I'll look up what the common name is. That's what they usually listed in, and then I'll do a search for that and actually look up like what are the other names for this substance, and then I start looking up that, because sometimes they don't put the true name of a substance on ingredients list. They might put like how we don't call or like for example how we call like how we don't call steak cows, like we don't call that cow muscle, we call it a steak. They do that with the chemicals too. So sometimes I just like deep dive into these chemicals and see like what is this actually and what is it and what are the side effects, and you know. And the craziest thing is like some of these derivatives inside of these chips are, they call them like flavor enhancers, but it's mind control. Like they're used to control the mind. It has actually nothing to do with taste, because oftentimes people don't realize that taste is a mental function. Like it's a matter of perception through the brain. And so a lot of these chemicals that they're adding in there, are really just so that you think it tastes good. Like, it doesn't actually taste good without it. Like, if you take that out, it doesn't have the same taste, because the chemicals that they're putting into the foods are designed to make you believe that this actually is a pleasant experience, when in actuality it's quite toxic. So when you cut all that out, you don't have these mind-numbing agents floating through your blood anymore. And that's why oftentimes people talk about cravings. I'm like, that's a good sign. That means the body is flushing these chemicals out of your body. But to answer your question about how I transitioned, I think, like all things, nothing for me never really happens overnight. It wasn't just like I just woke up one day. Yeah.
Why is my camera freezing up now? I just wanted to say, before you get into that was a really great way of saying that. I really like the way you put that. That's all.
Yeah. So about my transition, how I transitioned, like I said, for me, it wasn't like a one and done, or like, it's not like I got one piece of information and then I decided. Really, my life in general is the way that I live in my relationship with God is like, okay, God will give me like a vision for something, like an end state. Like, okay, this is the end goal, right? Or like, this is what I have for you, or this is what I see for you. And then, but he never really like clearly lays out, okay, you need to take step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, right? I never get like a roadmap, because like I wish sometimes I got like a Google map set of directions that's like, okay, here turn left, there turn right. It don't really work like that. What really often happens is like I get clues. So each step of the way, as I'm moving in the right direction, I get a new clue. Like, I'll get a new piece of information, I'll meet a new person, I'll see something, you know what I'm saying, that makes me think like, oh. And then it resonates, and I'm like, oh, cool. So for me, how my journey initially started, like how I even became raw vegan those 12 years ago, was, it started for me, it really started with like my grandmother's passing. And the reason that was like so influential for me was because prior to that experience, death had always happened instantly, right? Like, I never saw like that slow decline to death. It always happened like quick. So you would get news that like, oh, such and such got shot, and then it's like, or such and such had a heart attack. They out instantly, right? We got a call that my grandmother had a stroke and that she was in the hospital, and that was someone who, my grandmother is who you looking at me today, you see my grandmother. You see my mama and you see my grandma. My grandma was my idol. She is still to this day. You know what I'm saying? Like, kind of who I model myself behind in terms of my behavior. And she was someone that graduated high school at 16. And this is back in like the 40s and 50s. You know what I'm saying? She was someone who graduated high school at 16 and moved to New York from North Carolina by herself and made it. You know what I'm saying? So this is who this woman is. And that's who she been her whole life. Just a get up and go make it happen. Don't take nothing from no one. You know what I'm saying? She one of them. So with her going from being up and out and active to literally, she was out at a Christmas party when she had her stroke. And she went from being up, active, feisty, a good time, always the life of the party, to literally being bedridden overnight. And then like this slow decline where what was weird for me was like, because all this is new. I have never experienced anything like this before, especially being that close with her. You know what I'm saying? But it was like 1 week she'd be doing okay, and then next week it'd be a problem. And then they'll get it back stable again, and then it'll be something else. You know what I'm saying? And it was just this weird thing where it was like she never really regained anything. It was just this slow degradation. And I remember having a conversation with the doctor at the hospital, because I'm definitely one of them. Like, I'm going to have a conversation with the doctor and the nurse. They need to know who we are. I got questions. I need answers. And don't be trying to BS me, because I'm one of them. I'll get into you. business real quick. So I'm in there having a conversation with the doctor, and the doctor is basically explaining to me, like, the challenge they were having was, as they were trying to treat the symptoms or the ailments that resulted from the stroke, it was causing some of her underlying issues to act up. And then when they would try to treat those, then it would cause the stuff from the stroke to act up. So he described it to me, and he was like, it's basically like we're trying to plug this hole in this water hose, and every time we plug one hole, another hole pop up. And so he's telling me, he's like, basically the only thing we can really do at this point is just make sure that, you know, try to keep her as comfortable as possible, which meant keeping her drugged up on morphine. And so that was the first time that I realized that, like, oh, you can get to a point to where there's really nothing that the doctors can do. And it don't really matter how much money you have, because it's not a matter of, okay, we just need to get her into a new hospital with a new set of doctors or new care or none of that. Because that wasn't, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't that. It was really like, it don't matter where you go at this point. You've gone too far past the point that traditional institutionalized medicine can do anything. And that was a wake-up call for me, because I never encountered that before. I never saw sickness. I never really understood how powerful health was and how helpless you feel when you don't have it, and everything that you thought was supposed to be there to help you is telling you, like, it ain't nothing we could do. And I was like, oh, okay, I wasn't ready for that. You know what I'm saying? So that was like the first start of me thinking, like, oh, I probably need to figure something out. Because I was a little heavy. I was heavier. But the thing, too, about being heavy or thicker and being from the South is like, don't nobody care that you thick, girl. Everybody thick. You know what I'm saying? We from the South. That's what it is. So my thickness was never really like a thing where it was like, oh, I really want to lose weight to feel better about myself. Because I always felt cute. I was just like, oh, you know, I probably need to do something about my weight. You know what I'm saying? Not that I was having any issues, but I think having that experience made me realize, like, oh, I don't ever want to be I don't want to be in this predicament. I don't want to be in this situation. But at the time, I really didn't know what health was, and I didn't really know what that meant as much as, like, okay, I probably need to do something about this, right? That was kind of like the first little, like, God was like, hello, wake up. Are you listening? Are you here? Here's your first clue. And then, like, a little while later, this was also during the time that I was working on my PhD. So my PhD is in biomechanical engineering. And how that even led to me becoming a wellness coach was that the study of biomechanical engineering is really about the study of the body, but like a piece of equipment. So we use engineering principles like mechanics, dynamics, fluid, thermodynamics to understand how the body operates. So a good analogy to think about is like, looking at the heart, right? And you know, the heart is like, it has these four main arteries. We would look at that and model it similar to an engine with 4 cylinders, and study it like that. So that was the coursework I was in at the time. And I remember I got this another clue when I went to class one day, and I was in class, and my professor, we were talking, I don't even remember the name of the class at this point. I can't tell you for the life of me, like, what exactly we were talking about. But I do remember in the course, we were talking about, like, because part of being a PhD, sorry, I need to fix my battery's going low. Part of being a PhD was, like, you had to develop your own theorems, but you usually base them on somebody else's. So, like, we were going through, like, theorem breakdown. Like, okay, if this is the situation, you use this set of equations, and if it's this situation, you use that. And so he was explaining to us that, like, basically when it comes to, like, consumption and the body processing the things that you consume, it, like, from a engineering perspective, you either classify it as, like, the body will either classify it as a poison or will either classify it as a nutrition. So the body kind of operates binary in that way, right? So there's no in between. It's not like hybrid where it's kind of healthy or not. The body either says, okay, this thing that you're eating is good for me, I can absorb it, I can consume it and do something with it, or is not, and I need to set off a different set of reactions in order to manage this poison that you've given me, right? So this is the nature of the class. So I'm like, okay, Makes sense. And so then, because I'm a curious student, I always been, so I asked, I was like, oh, so how does the body know the difference between poison and nutrition, right? And my professor goes, he's like, oh, he's like, well, it depends on the molecular structure. And he was like, if it is carbon bonded, then the body will see it as nutrition. If it's not carbon bonded, then the body will see it as poison. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Got another question. What things are carbon bonded? And then he goes, he's like, well, if it grows in nature, right? If it grows in nature from nature, it is carbon bonded. Everything else is not. I said, oh, got another question. And I asked this question in real life, and I said to him, I said, so what about chicken? Because I had just went out to the carry out. I was living in DC, so I had just went out to the carry out the night before and had chicken for dinner, and I definitely had the leftovers in the freezer and the refrigerator that I was gonna get to as soon as this class ended. So I wanted to know, like, what about chicken? You know, because I got this chicken at home waiting on me. And then he looked at me and said, well, do chickens grow from nature? Do they grow in nature? And I said, fair enough. Sassy answer, but fair. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, oh, so that was the thing that clicked it for me. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So after that class, we finished the class, I go home, I clean out my entire refrigerator. I get rid of everything. Everything. I throw the chicken away. I get rid of everything. Because he also concluded his statement by saying, yeah, that's why you get tired after you eat. Because your body is treating it like poison. So it has to shut down other functions so it can neutralize the damage that you're doing. And keep in mind, no shade to my professor, if you're watching this. But this man was like maybe 5'4", 300 pounds. So that was like that was the second biggest wake-up call for me, because I'm like, you know the information. Like, you got the science. Why are you not applying it? Like, how can you say that so casually but not practice it? And I never wanted to be one of those, because one of my core principles about myself, I am who I said I am. And I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do. And I'm going to stand on what I said I'm going to stand on. That's me. Up and down. You know what I'm saying? That's my grandma. Up and down. So I was like, cool. I'm definitely not about to be one of them out here preaching this, that, and the third, and not actually living what I say I know to be true. Because if you the professor and you teaching this to us, you either believe it to be true, but not doing it, or you either don't believe it, and that's why you're not doing it. So I was like, cool. I went home that same day, cleaned out my fridge, cleaned out everything. And my initial thought was, okay, I'm just going to do, because I wanted to test it. That's the thing about being a scientist. My brain is an engineer. We're scientists. So if you give me a theory, I'll test it. You know what I'm saying? To see if it's true or not. So I was like, okay, cool. I made a commitment to myself, and I was like, all right, we're going to commit to 60 days of eating all plants. But at the time, I was like, I think I'm going to do a 60-day juice cleanse. Because for some reason, that was all I really knew about eating healthy. Like, that was kind of the only exposure I had. I think I had watched Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, and I saw what he did with the juices. So I was like, all right, cool. We're going to do a 60-day juice cleanse. Now, that was actually a big joke, and the joke was on me, because I knew at the time I'm not mentally ready to do no 60-day juice cleanse, especially I just had chicken from the carry-out last night. Okay, I'm not ready to do no 60-day juice cleanse. And I had tried juice cleansing before, and I think the furthest I had got at that point was like 11 days. And then I went back to eat whatever I was eating. So I was like, okay, knowing what I just experienced with my grandma, and I have this experience in my class, and I'm looking at my professor, I'm like, okay, whatever we say we're gonna do, we actually have to commit to doing. So as I was Googling and looking up, like, okay, maybe I'm not ready for a juice cleanse. I found someone who had did a juice cleanse, and her transition after that was going all raw. She was like, now that I've been cleaned out my body and stuff, I'm going to do all raw. And I was like, oh. And there was this very pretty Black woman. I don't remember her name. She didn't go on to be like an influencer. She was just like someone who made like a couple of YouTube videos and then kind of disappeared, right? So I was like, all right, I can do raw, because like I could definitely do raw for 60 days because I like to eat. And doing all juice, I was just like, I don't know how I'm gonna reconcile juice. And I'm a PhD student where my classes, like you might only have 1 or 2 classes a day, but each class is 4 hours long. And it's not even a lab. We talking 4 hours of lecture. So I was just like, I'm not ready for no juice cleanse. So I was like, but I can do raw. You know what I'm saying? Because raw is just fruits and salads. And that was easy. And I was like, okay, I could do that. So I said to myself, I was like, we're going to commit for these 60 days. Like, we're going to challenge ourselves to do this and stick with it. Because, like I said, before I had tried things, you know, I tried a little this, tried a little that, you know. You lose a little bit of weight, you start getting, you know, you start feeling good in your jeans, and then you like, shit, I'm good now, you know what I'm saying? So I was like, no, we're going to commit to these 60 days no matter what. Like, I made up in my mind, 60 days, hard, not stopping. So I started with raw vegan. And honestly, the first 3 days were the hardest. And then after that, I was smooth sailing. And then by day 11, it clicked. Like, oh, I feel like it was like my changes happened almost overnight. Again, so talk about these classes. We got 4-hour lectures. Sometimes I'm in lecture 8 hours a day. You really good about the first hour. They would get me tuned in, taking notes, clocking everything about the first hour. By the time that hour and a half ended, I need a break and I'm tired and I don't even understand what you're saying no more. You know what I'm saying? After I cleaned up my diet, I was the best student. I was top of the class. I was in there. I was keeping up with it. You know what I'm saying? I was setting the pace now. You know what I'm saying? Now I'm like, oh, I'm alert. I'm calling the teacher out like, oh, no, actually, run it back. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was just instantly, and that was like very motivating for me. And I was like, oh, I feel smarter. You know what I'm saying? Like, literally within days, I felt smarter. And then I was sleeping better. I was feeling better. And then the weight started like literally just like coming off. Like, I lost my first 60 pounds. And that sounds like a lot. It sounds like a lot to me. But I lost my first 60 pounds in like 2 months, like 2.5 months. And I know that sounds crazy. Like, what? I'm like, yeah, I dropped that weight, came off, like gone. Like size, I was probably like a size US 14, 16 at the time, was down to like a size 6. You know what I'm saying? In like 2.5 months, like, you know what I'm saying? And then I was hooked sold by that point. And then and then basically like once I got that weight off or that first 160 pounds off, or whatever, I was basically just been kind of coasting. You know what I'm saying? Like I figured it out. I was still drinking at the time because I was still young and turned, but I was raw vegan though. You know what I'm saying? That was like the dichotomy of me was like, yeah, I only eat fruits and vegetables and salads and stuff like that, but I'm still outside with the homies. You know what I'm saying? So we was definitely still outside. And then kind of bringing it to present day, like I said, I did that for years. You know what I'm saying? Raw vegan, mostly high raw vegan, maybe some cooked meals here and there. But what would happen is like I would lose weight, I would get comfortable, and then I would start thinking I could maybe bring in certain cooked foods back, and then I might gain a little bit more weight, and then I'm like, let's try to get this weight back off, so I go back to raw. And then the pandemic happened. And the pandemic was life-changing for me in a lot of different ways. But it made me confront some very, very hard truths. And it also cleared out some of the disillusionment that I had, thinking like, okay, you know what I'm saying? We got this. So the pandemic hit. I was living in Denmark at the time. And because my job moves me, like I move around a lot for work. You know what I'm saying? So I got this big promotion, and they was like, we're going to move you to the headquarters in Denmark and stuff like that. And I was, you know, cool. You know, I'm a career girl, doing what I got to do, make sure ends meet. Or ends, I like to say not ends meet, ends exceed, because you know what I'm saying? Ends exceed. So I was in Denmark at the time the pandemic hit. And so in Europe, the pandemic hit. I'm going to have to grab a charger for my phone in a second. But the pandemic hit, and when the pandemic hit, I was like, oh, none of this money is actually going to help me. Like, it's not going to help stop none of the things that are occurring. And that was the biggest wake up call in a sense, where I was like, oh, like, money is definitely not the solution to all your problems. And so I ended up coming back to America for a while, for months. And during the pandemic, I came back to America because in Europe, they shut everything down. Like, it was ghost town. And I did that for like a couple weeks. And then I got on me and my sister was talking. And my sister just said something to me. And she was just like, why don't you just come home? And I was like, yeah. How I just come home? Because, like, why am I sitting here right now? So I literally, as soon as they started letting flights go back to America, because they would let you could only fly if you had an American passport. So as soon as they had a flight going out of Denmark, going to America, I was on the first thing smoking. Touchdown in the city, and then we turned, like, again, because I'm still young and turned. You know what I'm saying? So we outside, we partying, because we think the world ended. I don't know if anybody else felt like that, but I was like, we don't know what's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? So we just outside living life, because at this point, I'm still raw vegan, so I'm not really worried about no virus. You know what I'm saying? And I have a PhD. I understand how the body works. Like, I'm not worried about no virus. You know what I'm saying? I put everybody in my family on protocol. We knew what to do. I'm like, we're going to be fine, child. You know what I'm saying? You'll be fine. So we outside. Like, outside. And I started back. I was still drinking at that time. And I started back eating, like, certain cooked foods or whatever. Like, still vegan, always vegan. But I was, like, having more, like, again, we're thinking the world go in. So I'm like, why am I eating these fruits and vegetables? You know, I have a little veggie burger here, you know, get some vegan junk food there. You know what I'm saying? And then I had another wake-up call, again, clues. You know what I'm saying? Got to let you know when you're unpacking, when you're not. And I got this other wake-up call, and I used to have eczema. I cleared it now, which I'm proud to say. But I used to have eczema, and I hadn't had an eczema flare since I went raw. And then I started back eating certain cooked foods, and then my eczema flared up. And then I was like, I went raw again overnight. And then this time I did it even much cleaner than before. Like, lots of green juices, lots of fruits, lots of fruit juices. And then that's when I started realizing, like, this connection about the food is actually way deeper than the physical. It is about the emotional state. And so me eating these toxic, you know, processed vegan junk foods, because there are terrible vegan foods as well, it was also a mechanism for me to try to numb emotionally, because I'm not understanding what's going on with the world. And then when I had that eczema flare up and I went back raw and cleared it up, I was like, oh no, this is the way. And we're not doing none of that no more ever again. And so then I've really just been like 100% straight, clean, straight 100% raw, like no slip ups, none of that since then. And then I just been kind of, you know, still on the journey. And now here we are today.
That was a journey.
It was.
That was a journey.
Before you continue, give me 1 second. I'm going to grab my charger because my phone is going dead. So just give me 1 second. Yeah.
So what I wanted to just touch on, and I'll probably still be talking about it when she come back, is like the importance of understanding the difference between food and what's not food, and to get yourself to get your thinking, and your language in alignment with the truth, right? And I just felt the need to say this, and I understand that I'm like the only person that's on this right here. I'm the only person that I've heard anyway that just like to talk about the difference between food and what's not food, and to stop calling things that are not food food, right? Because, and you know, I understand like this is just a part of our programming, our conditioning, our brainwashing. The reason we eat the shit that we eat is because we think it's food. And like, this has helped me so much when I stopped calling it food. Like, I don't call it junk food. I don't call it bad food. I don't call it vegan food. It's either food or it's not. And food grows in nature. And everything else, that shit is not food. And it will help you tremendously if you stop calling it food and you call it what it really is. Because as long as you call these unnatural, man-made products food, you're just reinforcing the programming, the brainwashing, the conditioning that's responsible for you eating the way you eat now. You're in alignment with the programming and the brainwashing. You're out of alignment with the truth when you're not speaking the truth. So I can't even stress the importance and the significance of making this small adjustment, because instead of looking, when you start looking and seeing things for what it really is, when you start looking at these man-made, unnatural, artificial, toxic, poisonous, addictive substances that they tell us, they trained us to believe and accept as food, and you see it for what it really is, and you can say to yourself, that is not food. It has such a huge impact on you. The more you hear yourself say that is not food. I use this, I can't even tell you how many times a day, every single day, and it helps to keep me strong and in alignment and on my path. You know what I mean? When I say, because the opportunity for temptation always comes. It always comes. But I've learned how to just annihilate it, so it can't even gain any entry into my life, into my mind. It can't influence my thoughts at all. Because as soon as something tries to come and say, hey, don't you want some of that? Try to tempt me away from eating fruit. First thing I say, that's poison. That's not even food. I'm not eating that shit. That's the first thing I say. And as soon as I say that, it's over. Now, I've been doing this for a while, so it has power when I say it. And cravings or temptations just never have a chance. And one of those reasons is because I refuse to call shit food that's not food. I feel like it's even like, I feel like it's disrespectful to food to put things that man made in the same category with things that nature made, because they're not in the same category at all. And I just wanted to like speak on that. Like, I felt like I needed to speak on that, because I heard that was just being tossed out a lot. And, I understand the why behind it fully, and when I tell people this, I don't know. It's like, I don't think people are really getting it, but I'm going to always continue to speak the truth. And if no one ever gets it, that's none of my business. I get it and I use it, and it helps me. It benefits me. It keeps me strong and temptation free and craving free, and getting the results I'm getting and having the successes that I'm having. and the growth that I'm having and achieving the things that I'm achieving and accomplishing and doing things that no one else has ever done. And, I was thinking about this yesterday after our Zoom meeting, that when you see someone doing things that no one else has ever done, they're going to think differently than everybody else thinks. Because if they thought the same as everybody else, they would be getting the same results as everybody else. But when you see them getting results that are different than everybody else, then they know something that others don't know. And if you're striving to go in that same direction, or even a similar direction, then it wouldn't be wise to just like shut down something that person says because it don't make sense to you or because you don't agree with it. Because when you look at the fruit of their life, like the fruit lines up, you can say, okay, well, that shit do sound crazy, but that person is doing this. They're doing that. They're doing things that I've never heard of anyone else doing. So he got to know something. She got to know something. Right? So we're about to wrap this up. Dr. Shay's phone had died and she's back on. So I'm bringing her back. And we about to wrap this up. We got about 12 more minutes. There are a couple questions had come through, and I want to get to that. Let's see. Okay, so she loves Cam. Like, I love this question. How did your family react to your transition?
That's also another good question. Like I said, I've been living this way for like 12 years now. So, and also too, my personality is one where it's like, my family is probably used to me kind of doing things a little different. You know what I'm saying? So, um, initially, when I first transitioned, well, also too, I don't live with my family, and I don't live in the same, like I haven't lived in the same state as my family, or I didn't live in the same state as my family when I was transitioning. So my initial transition, I mean, my family knew about it, but it wasn't until like they saw me after I had been living this way for a while. They was like, "Damn, you done lost a lot of weight," and I'm like, "Yeah, I did." Um, but I would say most of them, it's kind of like in the beginning, it was kind of like, "Oh, okay, that's just her doing what she do, because she gonna do some different things. She gonna do some extra stuff. You know what I'm saying?" And then after a while, I think definitely during the pandemic, because I did go back home, we were spending so much time together. My mom actually transitioned. She's raw vegan. But she does a lot of juicing. She's a lot of fresh fruit now. And she's still on her journey, you know what I'm saying? Whatever that, you know, riding that wave. But yeah, some people are, I don't know, like some people it's a joke. I think it's funny, like, they make little jokes like, oh, she'll eat rabbit food or she'll eat grass or they'll be like, well, what do you eat? You know what I'm saying? I get those comments and stuff like that all the time. But
Well, what about since you're in London, right?
yeah.
And your family's in Atlanta?
Yeah, Atlanta, North Carolina, different parts
Okay,
of the
so what about your friends in London?
yeah.
What about
Um,
that?
That's a good question. Most of my friends know how I eat, but also too, at this stage, like I've been living in London 4 years, so a lot of the people that I've met in the last 4 years met me after I transitioned and once I was like fully in my raw vegan bag. So I mean they know, but it doesn't really come up that often because, well, it comes up sometimes because, I get invited to dinners and stuff like that, and I just be like, I probably ain't going, or we'll have to do something different, or like do a picnic out or something like that. But most of my friends work in entertainment because that's also one of my other jobs is, I manage artists and I work in music and stuff like that. So a lot of my friends here, I really see them like out at the club. So, I mean, it don't really come up for real. But they know I don't drink. I stopped drinking many years ago. Not many years, but I stopped drinking like 4 years ago. Um, and so everybody know I don't drink. So they know that like, oh, Shay gonna remember what happened, or actually she's sober. You know what I'm saying? Like they know that. So, but in terms of like what I eat on a day to day, it's a joke. I mean, it's a joke, but it's like it's not. It doesn't really come up in our day to day conversation, and I think a lot of that has to do with me. Like one of the things about me is when it comes to how I live on a day to day, like when people are like, "Oh, what do you eat in a day?" All of that is very ritualistic for me. So when I say I'm deeply rooted in my spirituality, I carry that fully. You know what I'm saying? So in terms of like how I get up and live my day, how I break my fast, what I eat on a day to day basis, that's very private for me because that's part of my ritual. That's part of the habits that make me who I am. And so I don't really leave that up for conversation, or I don't really make that the topic of conversation because it's very personal to me. And because it's so personal to me, I don't even want to run the risk of like potentially having to explain myself because that's one thing I don't like doing. And one thing I'm not about to do is try to justify it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like part of my motivation for writing the book was I wanted the information to reach those who were curious. I don't really see myself as someone who tries to convince people to participate in this lifestyle. If you ask me questions about it, I'm happy to answer them. If you come to me, because a lot of my friends know I'm a doctor, a lot of people know I do wellness coaching. A lot of my clients have come through word of mouth or referrals. So if you come to me and you are looking to progress or to get healthier in some way, then yeah, we can sit down and chop it all day. But just in general, I try to make my relationships based off like the nature of the relationship so that we can respect what we love about each other and also respect where we're different without me feeling like I'm trying to bring you to my side or you trying to bring me to yours.
Okay, that was so you're kind of, it sounds like part of it is you know how to navigate the journey well. The other part is, especially with family, because one thing I noticed, the difference I noticed between family and friends sometimes is family are more bold to speak than friends. Like certain
family
family,
is
they'll just
most likely to
come
say
out and
something
say some shit.
wild.
They'll
Yeah.
just front on you at
Yeah.
an event or whatever. Like, man,
Like
you
your
look
auntie
sick.
go catch you and say something slick. You could be like, what? What you just say?
Yeah, so but that's that's pretty I'll say it's pretty fortunate that you haven't really had to. But see, I don't deal with that. It I guess it depends on your personality because I
Yeah.
just have like I don't play. Like, and so like people just know not to say anything to me about the decisions I make with my life, how I live my life. I'm talking about in real life. On social
Right.
media, people got courage that they don't have in
Right.
real life.
Right.
I'm talking about in real life, face to face, people know.
Right.
Just
Right. That's what I'm saying. Nobody has never said anything like the most comments I get, the funniest comments I get, which always happen when I see someone I haven't seen in a long time, like the last 10 years. Like if I like say like last time I went home or whatever, I was seeing people I hadn't seen in forever. And people would just be like, damn, you lost a lot of weight. And like I had this one friend, he was drunk when we seen each other. He just kept saying it like, damn, you lost a lot of weight. Damn, you lost a lot of weight. Damn, you lost a lot of weight. And I was like, yeah, we get it. Like I did. Now what?
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Now what? So, but but even then, like you said, it's all about how you navigate your interactions with people. Most people you know what I'm saying? Most of my friends are very kind, very loving, very respectful. And even if they're curious, they'll ask questions out of curiosity, but it's never like, well, why you do that? Or why you live that way? Or da 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 da. Or I can't believe you don't drink. You know what I'm saying? Like, not really. Like most people respect that. You know what I'm saying? Cause I respect it. You know what I'm saying? And I don't. I haven't fluctuated. I don't deviate. It's not like, oh, okay, you catch me today, I'm only eating fruits, and then tomorrow you catch me in the corner sneaking chicken. Like, nah, I've been consistent in how I show up, and I think that people just come to know, like, no, that's just Shay and how she do. You know what I'm saying?
You
So
know what I've always found interesting, that I've heard from others, and I wanted to address this before we wrap up. Before we end this, I want you to just share a little bit about your books. Um, and but before that, um, that's actually like a lot of people's experience. Like it's shocking to me. Like I've talked to people that were living, say, like a raw vegan or fruitarian lifestyle in secret because they were scared to let their family know because of what their family would say.
yeah,
And like
I understand that.
you would think that like one might say, well, that don't even make no sense. Like, but that's actually pretty common. Like I've
Yeah,
heard that a lot.
yeah,
And even like I've also heard a lot where people will go as far as going to the bar with coworkers, with friends, and having a drink while they're trying to transition because they're afraid
yeah,
to tell them that they're not drinking no more.
yeah,
They're afraid of the criticism, the judgment, the ridicule that they believe will come.
yeah.
Even I have a client, and she's on medications. Well, she's on drugs. She's on drugs, quack prescribed drugs. And you're not supposed to drink alcohol with that.
Right.
And even while being on these drugs, she will still go to the bar and have drinks,
Yeah,
you know, because she's afraid to say, I don't drink no more.
yeah.
Like like, and so this is really common though. It's
Yeah.
really common.
That's what I'm saying. I get
So
it. I definitely understand. I definitely understand because I went through phases of something like that to the point to where it's like it's not that I hide it. I don't always make it public information though. Like it's not something like I'm not the person that's walking around like, hey, I'm raw vegan. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
you know what? I don't. I love talking about it, and
Yeah.
but I'm not gonna just like religious people. Excuse me, are you saved?
Right. Have you
Excuse me,
had fruit steak?
do you eat fruit? You know,
Right.
I'm not gonna do all that.
Right.
But if you don't want to have that conversation, don't say nothing to me about nothing that has anything to do with eating.
That yeah,
Because
I'm
I'm
definitely
not
gonna
going to compromise. I'm not going to negotiate. I'm not going to shrink back, like none of that. I'm not
yeah.
going to water myself down. I'm not going to try to fit in. I'm not going to try none of that.
Yeah.
Just like they're not. And this is something I'm going to say this because I feel like this could help people because it really helped me in dealing with whoever feel like they got something to say about how I live my life.
Right.
Why should I have to conform? You conform.
Right.
Right? Why should I have to negotiate? Like I'm doing what's right. You're the one that's eating shit that's making you sick. The
Right.
fuck I'm gonna go back to eating that bullshit for? You're not even eating food.
Right.
I'm not gonna stop eating food and go back to eating poison to make you happy because
Right.
you think that's what I should do, man. You got me fucked up. Like that shit don't make no sense because people will be quick to invite you to a bar or to a restaurant, but invite them over your house and just hey, come over, let's have some fruit and just talk.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So they don't negotiate. They don't compromise.
Right.
They're gonna do what they want to do, and they don't care what you think.
Right.
So why you can't be that way?
Exactly. And
Right?
I look at it the same but slightly different. So where I'm at today, again, because it's been a journey, right, is oftentimes I've had to learn to give people grace. Because you got to understand, when you're eating these foods that are full of toxins, full of chemicals, your brain not operating well.
So
So
what?
I don't really expect you to, you know what I'm saying? Like if you don't get it, I'm not gonna try to force you to get it because you're not even giving your brain the nutrients it needs to be able to compute that 1 and 1 equal 2. And then I go even deeper with that, where it's like, okay, let's take it to the Bible because I'm good at that. I can pull a word for everything. You know what I'm saying? So it's like everybody gonna be like, oh, the Bible said you can eat this, you can eat this. Da, 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 da. I'm like, the first instruction God gave to man was what to eat, and it was you can eat all these fruits from this garden except for the thing from this tree. And even though it was depicted as an apple, we know it wasn't no apple. You know what I'm saying? That's a pictorial metaphor for the things that you should not be consuming. So I look at all of that other stuff as like, if you partaking in that, then you listening to the serpent. You know what I'm saying? You don't allow the serpent or temptation to guide you off of the path. And so I don't really hold a lot of weight into much of what you got to say about me because you're not even living according. You're at this point working against your own best interest. And that's what I want everybody. If anyone listening takes anything away from this, understand that when you eat unnatural foods, you eat foods that are processed, manufactured,
Things that are
farm
not even
raised,
food at all.
you are working against your own best interest. You are harming no one more than you're harming yourself. So if you are comfortable with that, because people be sick, they don't feel well, they got all types of issues, and they never take it back to the food. They never take it back to self. They never look at, okay, what do I need to do differently, or what do I need to do better? They always project out. You know what I'm saying? It's like people are like, oh, we can't eat nothing these days. It's like, no, you can eat plenty of things. You're just choosing to believe that man can create something better for you than God can, or that nature can, and that don't make no sense. So oftentimes, what I do is I just give people grace. I do a lot of silent praying for people because I know that people are off the path, and so, but I know that we all find our way back eventually. You know what I'm saying? So I just do a lot of
Well,
praying and giving people grace
yeah.
because I understand that it's like if you're indoctrinated into a certain belief, it's much easier for you to believe that everybody else is wrong than to believe that maybe you've been lied to. You know what I'm saying? So I don't really take I kind of I try to let it bounce off me as much as possible. You know what I'm saying? But I
Yeah.
don't, everybody's gonna find their way eventually. But this is the thing I can say. I've been living this way for 12 years now, and there are lots of people that have seen me live this way over 12 years that have changed their habits. Guys I've dated, like people I know, friends, maybe they don't go all the way. I actually did have one friend go raw vegan. You know what I'm saying? Like my best friend at the time, she went raw vegan when shortly after I transitioned. A lot of my friends know I eat fruit, so anytime we have things, they'll always have fruit there. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of like to look at it as like my way of living has inspired others to adopt better choices. Maybe not completely or 100%, but small things. And sometimes they just really be enough to ask for. It's like, okay, as long as I can be a positive influence, that's really my goal. That's why I get involved in so many things, is because I always look at an opportunity and I'm like, I can do some good here. And that's what I go into it trying to do, is just trying to be good into this environment, or try to spread some positivity or add light into a situation. And then,
Yeah.
yeah,
I just wanted to that was like the way you're also, well, I don't know if you're the only person. You're the only person that I've heard um like I've heard people mention like Genesis 129, like that first. This is, when we lived in paradise, this is what God
Right.
told us to eat.
Right.
Now you're talking about, yeah, the Bible talks a lot about eating animals and sacrificing them and all that shit. This
Right.
is after death entered into the world.
Right.
So
This is
it's a
after we
totally
disobeyed the
different
first
way
set
of
of instructions.
living. It's a totally different lifestyle. It's a totally different mentality, or just totally different everything. Like these are two totally different time periods. Paradise and death are not the same thing. They have nothing in common. Like, or
Right.
another way you could say paradise is life.
Right.
We had life for like 2 chapters in the Bible. And
Right.
then every other chapter and verse in the Bible is under a dispensation of death. And so, everybody like to focus on, like, if you want to focus on this time of death and suffering and eat in alignment with death and suffering, then that's on you.
Yeah, do you think?
I'm going to eat in alignment with life and peace and joy and gratitude. And it's clearly laid out. If you are a person that believes in the Bible, you
Yeah.
know, um, as over 2 billion people claim to, it's clearly laid out
Yeah.
in Genesis exactly what to eat, and that's fruits and herbs. And the fruit, well, I don't know where it being referred to as an apple came from, because
Right.
that's not in the Bible at all.
No.
The Bible never says that. It never tells you what it was. All you know is that it was some type of fruit that God said don't eat,
Right.
and they ate it. And
Right.
then death entered the world.
And that's exactly what they say in the word. Like he says that in the word, right? Like if you can eat freely from this tree, you'll be fine, you'll live abundantly. If you eat from this one tree, then death will surely find you. And people don't understand. This is the thing that I had to learn as part of my journey is that death doesn't always happen instantly. Sometimes it's a slow degradation. And it starts with sickness and then it becomes death. So I'm like, okay. I'm a scientist. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to experiment and try it out and see what happens. And as I tried it out and saw what happened, I was happy with the results.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up. We went a little bit over, but it's okay. Um, but boop, 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 boop. I feel like this was a great interview. There was a lot said on here today, and I really believe that people that tuned in, people that will tune in, because I believe the replay should be available on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram. Um, there's a lot in this. There's a lot in this. I'm gonna look into pulling out some clips of some highlights, just like some little bites that people can get real quick, and they don't have to listen to the hour plus of the whole thing. But Dr. Shay, thank you for being my first guest. You may be my only guest, because this is not something that I have any intentions on doing like regularly. But still, thank you for being my first guest, and for everything that you shared. Uh, I guess before we go, just talk real quickly about your books and where they could be. Like, it's been scrolling across the bottom of the
I
screen,
saw
but
that. I really like that. Thank you.
yeah, but go ahead and just tell everybody a little bit about the 3F effect and flush the junk.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first, I want to say it is a high honor to be your first guest, and I definitely carry that with me. And so, yeah, thank you for having me. It was definitely my pleasure. And thanks for giving me a platform. some of these things. As far as my books go, sorry, my lighting is going out. But as far as my books go, I have 2 books out currently. The first one is called Flush the Junk. It's a comprehensive guide to detox and enemas. And you can find both of my books on my website, www.eat2growrich.com. You can spell that with the number 2 or the word 2, and it'll take you to the same site. But again, that's www.eat2growrich.com. And you can also find them available on Amazon as well. So you can either just search my name, Dr. Shay Marshall, or you can look up the titles of the book on Amazon, and they're available in paperback and digital version. But the 3F effect is really me providing a framework and a guide for how to lose weight quickly. And one of the things that I really love about the book is on this journey, I discovered, as we spoke about earlier, that it's not just enough to change the actions. You really have to deal with the emotional and the mental components that are leading you to adopt the behaviors that you have. And so in this book, we speak about the 3 F's, which are fruit, fasting, and fitness, and how they benefit the mind, body, and spirit. And then towards the end, we tell you about how they all work together, the synergies of how to do them all together. And we also speak about basically giving you a guide for how you can develop your own plan. Because one of the things that I think is also important for you to understand is everyone is not going to go 100% fruit overnight or ever. And for me, you get to decide. This framework is flexible. But what I do advise is that you at least have some form of fruit, some level of fruit in your diet, some level of fasting, and some degree of fitness. And then I tell you in the book what type of fitness is going to give you what type of results, why you should eat the fruit, why you should do the fasting, the different type of fasting you can do, because there are different fasting protocols. So some people do intermittent fasting, which is like, or do like an 18-6, which is where they fast for 18 hours, eat for 6, or 16-8, or 1 meal a day, or alternate day fasting. There are different protocols. So we talk about all the different ones in the book, and then we just give you some guidelines for how to develop your own plan so that you move closer to your goals. And that's what I wanted to do, was to offer a transition plan for people who aren't going to go 100% fruit or don't have a desire to, because it's not for everybody. And I really found that through my coaching, if you try to get people to go too far too quickly, they end up reverting back and almost rebounding back the complete opposite way. So I wanted to provide a framework that gives you a guide to transition. And I also explained in the book too that weight loss is really about removing the waste, or releasing the waste that is trapped in the body. And that's where the fruits help to detox, the fasting help to reset. And then also that's where you'll find with the Flush the Junk, which is a separate book, but it's also a complement to the first book because it goes more into detail about how you should detox. So the reason that detox is so important is because we eat so many toxic foods. And the things that we need to understand about the foods that we are eating, the processed foods, is that they are designed to be shelf stable, which means they are designed to not decompose, which means that when you eat them, they still don't decompose. And most people don't understand that biologically, after you're done chewing, that is the most mashing or crushing that the body is going to do to that food. The rest of it will, there are no teeth in your throat or in your digestive systems. And a lot of people have this belief that like the stomach acids are so strong that they're going to melt everything. And it's like, no, they're not. Because the acid in your stomach is not stronger than some of these chemical, man-made. Keep in mind, the body is natural. A lot of these things are not. So your body really can't compete with some of these chemicals and preservatives that are put in the food. So a lot of times when we see a bloated belly on someone, because you'll even see small people with bloated bellies, or you'll hear people talk about all the time about how they bloat after they eat certain foods, or how they have all these bowel issues and stuff like that. That is simply your body saying that, like, hey, there's something in me that's stuck and I need to get it out. And so the whole book about detoxing and enemas is really me saying giving people a framework and a guide for how to do the internal cleansing. Because there are people that go viral on this podcast, or on not this podcast, but there are people that go viral on podcasts talking about how they don't shower every day. And people will be like, oh my God, I can't believe you don't shower every day. But it's like, if you feel so strongly about washing the external body, do you not know that the sweat and the toxins and the smells that are coming through to the outside are also in the inside? And so if you believe so strongly about cleansing the outside of the body, then you should also feel just as strongly about cleansing the inside of the body. And people like to be like, well, enemas aren't natural. I'm like, but the food you eat ain't natural. So what are we talking about here? You know what I'm saying? So that's why I made the book, to basically give people a framework and to educate them. Because in that book, we also talk about the history of enemas and knowing that this practice goes back to ancient times. This is not anything new that we're discussing. This is a modality for cleansing and healing that has been practiced since the beginning of time. And so if they were even doing it in a time where they were eating more natural foods, then of course you should have some type of detoxification, cleansing protocol. Even if you're going to keep eating the stuff that you're eating, you should have a detox protocol in place, which says that something like, okay, because, I get it, you want to be outside, that's fine, do you think? But at least, 7 days out the week, I eat a certain clean way and I do my enemas, so at least you have some, or it's not, 7 days out the month or something like that. Like, have some type of regular cleansing. Okay, well, every Sunday I only eat fruit and then I do my enemas or something. You should have something to do that is really dedicated toward helping your body be its best self. And if you're feeling any type of discomfort or disease, whether that's headache, poor menstrual cycle, poor digestion, overweight, reproductive issues, whether it's infertility or erectile dysfunction, any of those things, then that is a clear sign that the body is operating out of alignment. It is not operating how it was naturally designed to operate, which means that is a clear indication that you're eating more unnatural food or too much unnatural food, so much so that it is interfering with the body. So love yourself enough to do the work that's necessary to cleanse and take care of the body, so the body will take care of you. So yeah, those are my books. They're available on my website, like I said, www.eattogrowrich, or on Amazon. You can Google my name. You can search my name or the book titles, Flush the Junk or The 3F Effect, and you'll find both of them.
Well, that's where you go. I can say, just looking at the 3F Effect, that book is very thorough. It's very thorough. I haven't read the whole book, but I just don't see how you could have any questions left unanswered after reading that book, in context of what it's talking about.
Yeah.
Fruit, fasting, and fitness. Like that, I was like, sheesh. Like, she leaves nothing out. She's talking about everything. And she actually has the knowledge base to support it and give you the truth. She's not telling you that about eating animals and how you need it for a good workout regimen or fitness program because you need the protein,
right,
or any toxic information like that. So check those out. Great interview. Thanks again, Dr. Shay. Everyone that tuned in, thank you for tuning in. I hope you got something from it. Everyone have a great day, and we'll see ya.
One thing I want to go. If you are looking to find me, you can find me on Instagram at Eat to Grow Rich. You can also find my page on Facebook. My Facebook profile is Dr. Shay Marshall, Dr. Shay being the first name, last name Marshall, or you can also find me on Facebook under Eat to Grow Rich as well. And Kev, I also want to say I just have so much gratitude for you giving me this platform, and also connecting with me and being my coach. I'm happy to say that I was coached by Coach Kev. And so yeah, thanks for having me. And this was definitely an honor and a privilege to be a part of this. So thanks.
Thank you. That's sheesh, my camera just has been constantly freezing up. But that's something that I didn't add Say that one more time. Where to find you at on social media?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram at Eat to Grow Rich. That is EAT, the number two, GROWRICH. Eat to Grow Rich. You can also find that same page on Facebook under the same title, Eat to Grow Rich. On Instagram is one straight word, Eat to Grow Rich, and then on Facebook is Eat to Grow Rich. And then you can also find me on Facebook. As Dr. Shay Marshall. So Dr. Shay is the first name, last name Marshall. So yeah.
Okay, so eat to grow rich on Instagram, eat to grow rich, Instagram, and
Facebook.
your eat to grow rich on Facebook, and your Dr. Shay Marshall on
Yes.
Facebook.
So my
too.
business has a business page under Eat to Grow Rich, and then I have my profile, Dr. Shay Marshall.
Dr. Shay Marshall. Okay, so 2 pages on Facebook, Dr. Shay Marshall, Eat to Grow Rich. Go check her out, give her a like, give her a follow. And on Instagram, again, Eat to Grow Rich. Follow her, stay in touch with her. Man, I feel like you're going to see a lot more coming from her because she knows she has too much inside of her for it to stay inside of her and not to be shared with others. And that's the whole purpose of it in the first place. You know, when we accumulate, you know, truth, especially at higher levels, that's not just for us to live and, live great and, live in paradise and, skip through the flowers and hum melodies and all that and just forget about everybody else. It's for us to share with the world. And she brings truths, as I mentioned before, that I'm just not hearing, really anyone say. And they're really powerful truths. They're really powerful. So have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you around.
See you. Thanks for having me.